Hello and welcome to CherrySTEM 35, but doesn't really matter anymore because we're gonna either give you guys CherrySTEM Seed, where we give you lots of new information about things that we're interested in, and hopefully you're interested in too, or we'll give you CherrySTEM MINDBEND, as is today's show, which those are so far a little more rare, but hopefully you enjoy them as well. They will also center around the topics that we like, but with a little more um, cerebral thinking about it. Maybe sort of like, I don't know. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be a good twist. You're gonna like it. So let me bring your attention real quick to the board you see in front of you. This show is brought to you by, well, us and patrons that help us out. All patron help goes towards everything that we're able to do and give you all and send out there. But I would recommend, if you are to support us, to check out the Challenger tier. That one directly supports CherrySTEM show, and you have the ability to hang out with us in the after chat, after show, where we discuss special patron only topics. And I really think today's ones is very interesting. And we're gonna do that with patrons. So if you'd like to become a patron and support the show, and also not get too many nudes in your face, Challenger is probably the right tier. Anything hardcore and higher, well, you run the risk of not safe for work stuff. So let us thank you once again, the viewers, but especially our supporters, for basically helping us do this thing. And we're going to try to bring it to you every week, so we'll see how that goes. Without further ado, let's start talking about stuff.
Without further ado.
Adieu. So, I have prepared some awesome concepts for you to
apparently I'm going
over.
to be surprised with what we're doing today, so
yes.
It's going to be interesting.
Yes, it is. I decided to bring you in fresh off the street as an expert on some of these things, while also presenting you, hey, ow, that hurts. Stop kidding. Presenting you with some interesting stuff. It's not precisely new information, but it is interesting paradoxes and some mysterious research that was found, or rather mysterious findings, right? Gotten through research. Also some news that are like kind of weird, curious. So it's called MINDBEND. So it's a bit of a, you know.
Sounds like fun.
Right, it's a bit of fun.
So she's gonna launch this stuff on me completely unprepared. And by the way, we're just now coming off of a 5-day fast, so I'm still feeling. I mean, we've had one small tiny meal since I'm not eating for 5 days, so I'm feeling a little
interesting.
Oh yes, exactly. There we go.
So, you know, speaking of the fast, we do actually have a Thanksgiving area. So November, right? Thanksgiving's in November.
Yeah. Sounds right.
So we do have a Thanksgiving era episode about fasting and things that you guys can learn about fasting is in there, and why would we do such a thing. So I will try to link that in a card, which is this little thing in the upper part of the screen that'll pop up, that'll let you click on the thing and go look at it. So
this particular fast was pretty difficult for us.
In a certain way. I felt like it was easier in some ways, but it was a harrowing experience.
Yeah, we tried to do a little. I decided to potentiate the fast with some supplements that are fasting mimicking, and that they help increase. What are the effects? There's apoptosis, and then there's I always forget the word for when a cell reduces.
Not autophagy.
Yeah, that's right. Autophagy.
Is it?
Yes, that's right. Autophagy. It's phaging itself. Okay. Why don't you go phage yourself? That is weird because a phage is like a virus for bacteria and stuff. And actually, phage therapy is
I thought it had to do with like just your immune system and stuff.
Oh yeah, no. Autophagy is when a cell
Like
starts to like.
phagocytes make me think of the immune system. What a funny word.
Huh. So I guess the word phage must have to do with cell destruction. It must be like some sort of Greek or something that has to do with cell destruction because a phage in whenever they talk about phages is like there's lots of phages in the ocean, and that's why exposure to the ocean can sometimes be a good thing because it can kill certain types of bacteria because it's a virus for bacteria and that's a okay. I need to mute that. So phage must have something to do with destruction of cells.
So anyway, my point was that why I'm bringing it up even, it sort of relates to just mentioning the fact that that's what we've been doing past week, and so we're a little
A little wonky.
yeah, a little loopy today. But it's good. It's perfect for MINDBEND. But also, we've been doing the fast of the liquid variety. So mostly just only drinking water and then tea. And we also had black coffee without any kind of creamer of sorts. And our sweetener was, substitute sweetener. But we did have energy drinks occasionally that also have low sweetener caloric.
Yeah, very low calories. Tried using that, but I'm wondering if those things might have. I mean, that's what we were talking about there. Well, how we got on the whole phagocytes.
Well, it relates to our story.
Because the autophagy is part of what you do for anti-senescence, which is the purpose of one of the purposes of fasting. And so we took some stuff that potentiated it, and that might have increased the difficulty and the weakness, etc., of the fast. I don't know yet. We'll have to do another fast without it to be able to kind of judge. But either way, I think it did its job because it was difficult.
Indeed, that it was. But we did supplement ourselves essentially with vitamin B of a variety of kinds. Our favorite blend that is in these ultra monsters, not sponsored, unfortunately. Maybe one day.
Bastards need to sponsor us.
I did pass them our card, the local truck that was at Tech Anime giving away free drinks. Hopefully they'll hit us back because we use them a lot and people know about them through us. And we have two favorite kinds actually, so it's like we could be so good to advertise for them because I only advertise shit I believe in, and I use this every day. But speaking of energy drinks or a variety of mixes, we have here for our
and by the way, those of you thinking that energy drinks are bad for you, that's the sugary ones. Yes.
Yeah, there's no sugar crash for the rehab and the ultra.
Away from sugary energy drinks. Do not drink.
Or the aspartame ones because those will make you feel bad.
Yeah, stay away from the aspartame ones. So really, yeah, that's
the problem with the sugar ones is that you get the sugar crash and then you drink another one and that ends up being way too much caffeine.
Yeah, and the problem with aspartame is it's an isomer of a brain chemical, and there's plenty of indications. Donald Rumsfeld helped push it through the FDA actually, even though they found that in primate studies they were causing neurological damage. So just stay away from the aspartame. They'll tell you it's just phenylalanine. It's just it's a normal chemical that you always have in your body. It's like, no, it's an isomer of it. Whenever you isomerize something, it has a completely different fucking action. It's just because it has the same atoms doesn't mean it's all about the shape, people. It's the shape of the atoms that's more important than just which atoms are assembled.
Well, I think it does
just as important. Anyway.
It requires a level of introductory chemistry to know that a lot of all biological processes are underlined by the electromagnetic shape and interaction of proteins. So it's like shape is super important.
Yeah, it's like
it's like the most important thing.
We are biology is wet nanotech. It's little machines made up of tiny little magnets, basically that are configured with their and they create all of these little magnetic fields
and
that are all these little magnets stuck together in a weird shape. Yeah. That's basically that's simplifying it a lot, but that's basically what it is.
And different shapes are different atoms.
Yeah, and if you've ever played with a stack of magnets, you can create a weird shape and then take one magnet, add it to that pile, and it'll reconfigure it, and that's something that does happen in
Biology.
in biology as well. So anyway,
Yeah. So speaking of energy drinks, because we have here now on our hands, thanks to a courtesy of Jeff Bezos, breathable vitamin B12.
what?
Yeah.
That's so weird.
Yeah, it's an aromatherapy inhaler. It's electronic, so it sounds like a vape to me. I don't know.
Vaping B12.
Right, but they say that it's Seek is the brand name of it, and it has B12. And I believe when you go to the product description, they talk about natural ingredients, including blended B12, B3, L-theanine, guarana, taurine, and coffee extract. So I mean that's
it's
a
energy
small
pack.
version of an energy drink, basically sounds like. And they're talking about the fact that using an aromatherapy delivery system, a vape, the inhaler of the B12 blend allows the nutrients-packed nano mist to enter the lungs for a quicker, more efficient absorption rate. And I don't think they're wrong.
Yeah, I mean that's an energy drink. You're breathing in an energy drink.
Yep.
That's what that is. I don't know. It's has there been any testing on the effect of taking that much stuff in? I mean, okay, it can't be as bad as smoking, but
it's on Amazon with 5-star, 7 people reviewing it. But
I don't know. I'm curious.
They are disposable.
I mean, a lot of times it's people say, well, anything on your lungs is bad. Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think your lungs were developed in a place where we were constantly exposed to dust and smoke and shit like that as the human species was growing up. And so I don't know that our lungs are that fragile. It's just
some of the interesting stuff I'm reading in the reviews, other than the excellent taste, is the fact that it is giving people a boost of energy, especially those that are bad at forgetting.
And it's hard to absorb B12. I mean, that's one of the reasons they give you sublingual
shot,
B12
or a shot. Some of the people are mentioning that they're bad at remembering their shots to take their B vitamins.
So people who have a problem with absorption of B12, which is a lot of older people, and certain I might actually have a genetic problem with that. I know I do with folate, but I don't know about B12 specifically.
And I am seeing that somebody is mentioning, and they're not expensive. It is a, I mean, they are expensive when it comes in terms of like an energy drink, but it seems like from what I'm reading in the reviews, just a few puffs and they like get a boost of energy.
Oh yeah, makes sense.
So because it is quick and you don't need to drink like a whole energy drink and wait for it to go through your stomach and absorb and then feel the energy. So that's neat. But also, of course, absorbing B12 directly. But on top of that, some people are saying that as a former smoker, it's curing their oral fixation. So that's really cool.
And it also would give them a quick boost like they would normally
little
have
placebo,
from cigarettes.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, as a stop smoking aid, it might be a really good stop
Juuls
smoking
or whatever.
aid.
But there we go.
Yeah,
exactly.
I could definitely see it being useful for that.
A lot of times people smoke. I remember as way back in the day as a former smoker, it definitely in the short term alleviates anxiety. So it's something that I've noticed that.
Well, if they pop some niacin in there, man, that would really make the difference. Unfortunately, they only have B12. Niacin will make a huge difference.
Some people might have just stronger.
Yeah, they might flush from it, and that would freak them out. If you've never had a niacin flush before, it's weird. And a lot of people don't even know what a niacin flush is, and because they've never had it, they just freak out when they have it. But
graceful cat, good job.
Good job, kitties. We got these kitties in here being silly.
Well, as a semi-ish former smoker and knowing others, a lot of times people go outside or during work or whatever to smoke a cigarette to relieve stress or anxiety or whatever. And so
I think B12 does also help.
I was about to say this is something that the energy drink that I've noticed, and it's one of my biggest thing about these energy drinks, and I've mentioned a couple of times to viewers on live streams that we've tried to replicate this blend, but there's something in like maybe how it all absorbs together versus vitamins absorbing at different times because they have different like coatings. Mm-hmm. But the energy drink, it's all like together at once, and so you get the full blend at once. Something about it is like special. But those energy drinks and B12 as well, it doesn't necessarily like wake you up, which it does too, but it like removes the anxiety of being sleepy. So I can absolutely see having an inhaler like that helping people remove anxiety in the way that smoking would, to be quite the ideal. stop smoking aid. If it's, I
Once
mean,
again,
it's on
also
Amazon, so I
sponsored.
would
We have
think
no
it's tested.
sponsors. We only have,
Seriously, stop
we have
it.
patrons. We don't have any sponsors.
I know, we need to stop talking nicely about things until they pay
Yeah,
us.
it's crap. Fuck this thing. Whatever
Don't
it
do
is.
it. I'm saying, in theory, a product like this, if it were to exist.
Okay, it actually seems neat anyway.
Yeah, it does. I have my bike. So now another thing we have, speaking of stress, is there's new research that is exploring how. Well, so basically, let me just, I guess, back up a little bit, in that science, and if you have been watching our show, you know this, but for those who haven't, let me just back up for a sec and mention that science has been and is continuing to find evidence that the bacterial universe in our guts affects our overall health and mental health and mood. So I've taken to calling it our second brain at this point, our gut. And there's some interesting presence of certain neurochemicals that are only in the brain and the gut, and it's a fascinating relationship.
Yeah, the connection between the brain and the gut. Actually, there's someone we know who discovered that there's a very direct link between vitamin D and autism, and they were able to prove exactly the mechanism for it, having to do with the way that the gut uses serotonin versus the way that the brain uses serotonin, and how those end up being flipped. And so that was one piece of the puzzle of autism that was solved in the past 5 years or so. It may not be absolutely everything, but it is a very significant piece. And so it's interesting how much there's all of these various chemicals, especially things like B vitamins and things that have to do with neurological issues that are related to your gut, the production of these vitamins via your gut bacteria, and also the various chemicals that your gut bacteria produce. Besides just the vitamins, so it's really interesting, the connection between the gut and the brain. It's crazy how closely they're linked.
And the even more fascinating stuff is that the variety of bacteria that you harbor, which is another reason of doing a fast, actually influences the cravings you have for different foods because of the materials it needs to reproduce and live. It's really insidious, but like fascinating, but interesting. Just how we can be controlled by bacteria that live in us. But on the other hand, from some of the TED Talks and things that I've didn't necessarily study in school per se, but have absorbed, is that we're like just coated in bacteria. As like,
yeah, we have more bacterial cells than our own cells, and it's like, so we actually,
what is that even? What is happening? It's so weird.
Yeah, our bodies are made up of if you take in totality the entire system that is us, it's more bacteria than it is human. So
bizarre.
Yeah, this is the cell count things. Our cells are huge, and bacteria are smaller, and
But it's just fascinating that we're like coated in a substance so
it's absolutely
and
crucial.
that we aren't even aware that.
Yeah, your microbiome on the outside of your body is very, very important too. It changes how your immune system reacts, and things like eczema and acne and things like that can be related to the bacterial balance on the outside of your body. So it's not just the bacterial balance inside your body that's important, it's also on the outside. But I think that the two are probably very closely related.
Mm-hmm. Almost.
And that is, if you I think the bacteria that you have in your body, the bacteria, I mean, it's not just bacteria. I keep saying bacteria, but it's actually it's bacteria and fungi, and so it's microorganisms more than it's just simply bacteria. The microorganisms you have inside your body end up kind of being very, that's what seeds the bacteria you keep on the outside of your body. I mean, you keep pooping, and whenever you poop, there's a little bit of bacteria left over, and so it's like and even after you wash yourself, actually, there's you could bleach, you could douse yourself in bleach, and very quickly thereafter you'd still just bacteria from the air, etc. You end up with millions of bacteria on you within minutes. So
that's part of why they try to sterilize things so much in a medical setting. They try to remove all the ambient bacteria.
Yeah, it's but you can't completely remove them. You can only reduce their numbers, right. And but that's one of the things. That's why a lot of times we're starting to understand that instead of sterilization, instead of removal of bacteria, which I mean, yes, for surgery, sterilization is a good idea, but for other circumstances,
like wiping your hands with sanitizer
right,
all the time.
it actually may not be the best way to go. To instead have defensive bacteria. It's just like the example I always give that's very, very useful is if you take care of a yard. Going out there and trying to kill the weeds over and over, you know, you could go and put Roundup on your whole yard and kill it all, and stuff let it keep growing back. And you know, if you imagine it in time lapse, and that it happens, you know, if you make that yard do what it would do normally in a month, within like 20 seconds. Then you know, going out there and putting Roundup on it over and over, it would just end up with nothing but weeds. And they keep popping back up, weeds. Whereas instead, if you can grow some grass on there, and that grass gets nice and thick, it'll choke out the weeds, and that's basically what you try to do with your microbiome, is to make sure that you've got a nice thick coating of grass, of what you actually want. But the thing is, the grass they're not as fast as the weeds. They don't move as fast. They're not. It requires a collection of them and kind of they're interreliant. In other words, it's a more complex system. Usually, simple systems will outperform more complex systems in the short run, but complex systems will outperform.
Allowed to grow.
Right, and so then that's kind of a general truth that doesn't just apply to microbiomes and grass and things like that, but it's kind of a general thing. You'll find that even with governments or with groups of people or whatever, there's you know, simple systems in the short term will outperform the more complex ones, but the complex ones are more sustainable, will last longer, and can if they're not destroyed by the simple systems, not destroyed by the weeds, they will actually overcome those simpler, more exploitive, less desirable systems that are not as good in a variety of ways.
See, I'd imagine, going back to your point about the grass, I'd imagine that's how we as humans took care of our health, and not, you know, weren't just dying from every disease all the time before we started bathing.
Yeah, exactly. We
had to do something.
We shared bacteria. I mean, that's one of the things you'll find with a lot of animals. Like if you ever took care of, you know, I spent a large portion of my youth with around animals. And like horses, as soon as the baby horse pops out, it's eating its mother's poop, because what they're doing is a lot of animals actually eat their parents' poop, and specifically, and I remember thinking, what the fuck is going on here? Why are they doing that? And specifically to pick up the microbiome and make sure that they've got that, and you know,
especially for bovines, don't they need that?
Oh yeah, if you don't
to digest the grass.
Yeah, if you don't with a calf, if they don't have some of their mother's first milk, which you know, that is their dirty udder, you know, with all that's on it, all that's growing, you know, with the milk that's been kind of dripping out, etc. If they don't nurse from their mother within the first 24 hours, they will almost certainly get scours, is what they call it, which is basically really bad diarrhea, and they'll die.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's very important that the calf feed from its mother within the first 24 hours, or it almost certainly will die. And it's really a huge problem with like young mothers. When you've got a mother cow it's her first calf, and she's not allowing it to feed the first time and stuff, a lot of times those calves will die if you don't. You have to go through so much crap, and you know, to try to. What we always try to do is try to get them, you know, just force them to feed somehow. And like we've actually like captured a mother and held her, you know, in place so that the baby could feed. But it's
what's with these irresponsible cow mothers?
Yeah, the new ones. They sometimes suck.
Yeah, they do, don't they?
New mothers sometimes suck. Well, they fuck it up with their first one.
Yeah,
a lot of first kids will attest to that. The mothers will fuck up their first one. But But yeah, and so it's interesting how much the animal kingdom is always trying to pass on that microbiome because it's just so crucial. It's a part of our whole system. It's they call it the second brain or whatever, but they are in medical industry they now are sort of treating it as an organ. Because it is like an organ. It is required for our functioning. We must have a microbiome.
Microbiome as
yes.
an organ? Oh.
Yeah, that it's an organ. And it's a different kind of organ than it's still required that it be there. You cannot live without it.
Right.
So
we do know how to modulate. We do know how to affect it. So I mean, we have some rudimentary grasp on this organ.
Yeah.
Well, so now new research. So basically, the point is science has been and is continuing to find evidence that the bacterial universe in our guts affects our overall health. But of course, the big parts of the story are still unclear, and they keep doing research to try to figure out like what does the big picture look like. But new research using mice adds to the intrigue by showing that social stress alters the composition and behavior of gut bacteria, leading to self-destructive changes in the body's immune system.
Wow.
Yeah. If similar biological dominoes fall in humans, it may provide clues about the development of autoimmune disorders and all this depression and all this stuff through social stress.
Yeah, okay, that totally makes sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because all the stuff that we talked about before, where you can transplant the gut bacteria of a mouse that's going out and is healthy in its socialization versus one that's like hiding and obviously more depressive and things like that, and you could just switch their gut bacteria and one would act like the other.
Well, also on the other hand, we have from what I've seen in the culture that we have people being born that are on some spectrum of some type, and they're just like more artistic, more gentle, more what civilization would want to produce, because we've always theoretically tried to move away from our brute primate jungle roots towards civilized elves society, right? I mean, so ideally, I mean, and I've seen this, like we have a huge nerd subculture.
Yeah, well, even the primates, there is a very important prerequisite of any gregarious animal that they be able to work together.
It's a prerequisite of civilization. So, so what my problem is that I'm seeing essentially what this experiment did, which was they exposed one group of mice to daily stress, which is rough encounters with more aggressive mice for 10 days. And that alone has affected their bacterial composition because changes into particular types of bacteria. So it changed their bacteria, even though everything else stayed the same, of course.
Interesting.
And there were genes associated with violent traits that were switched on, which also changed bacteria's and the way that they signaled to each other, the bacteria did.
So basically,
and they even looked at their self-reactive effector T cells, which is a signal characteristic of autoimmune disorders that they had in their lymph nodes.
So one of the things that we have to discuss right this moment is because most people will be like, well, that sounds like we're affecting the bacteria, not the bacteria affecting us. People think in this binary, I remember when I was younger, I thought in that binary way too. It's like, oh, well, is it the bacteria affecting the person, or is it the person affecting the bacteria? And it's both. And that's the thing is, you have to be able to understand that a river flows down through, a specific, a path. But that path is altered by the river. So is it the river altering the path, or is the path altering the river? It's both. There is a feedback between the two, and you can't select one or the other. And the depression is altered. The rocks and and the configuration of the riverbed is changed by the water, and the water is guided by the riverbed. Yet the river is constantly changing course. So you have to understand that that's the way that changes occur in things, is that there is a feedback loop between two things that looks like that each is altering the other. And so all throughout nature, there's all these things where the alteration, at one moment you look at it and you're like, oh, it looks like it's altering from this side. Oh, well, from this, it looks like it's altering from that side. Except it's both. They're both altering each other. And you actually find that in the way that the brain functions. There's these things where, do thoughts determine neurochemicals, or do neurochemicals determine thoughts? It's both. So there's you have to understand that first, and then you realize it's like, okay, so basically the output of the bacteria it changes our mental attitude, and then our mental attitude also changes the outputs of the bacteria, and and the environment in which they live. And so it's kind of like a lot of people have a problem with which came first, the chicken or the egg. Neither, because they're both one thing. There's slow, tiny changes from in both that occurred, and that's how you have a problem with people who don't understand that it's a false question to ask what came first, the chicken or the egg. It's just as false as asking what happens when an immovable object meets an irresistible force. You're asking a question that can't occur in reality, because there's something wrong with the question. If there are questions that are misleading, and so you have to understand that you'll run into those sorts of things all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's an important note.
Yeah, it's just, if we're going to talk about we're one moment we're talking about the way the bacteria alter your mental status, and then the next moment we're talking about how your mental status alters your bacteria.
We're talking about stress and mental status,
yes,
affecting bacteria, which then leads to, as they're calling it, a direct crosstalk between gut bacteria and the immune system.
Yeah.
Which then affects, I think it's estimated that 20 million people, at the very least, have autoimmune diseases and are more developing daily. So,
it's because we're stressing ourselves out unnecessarily. Right, we're living in a completely stressful environment, because
but also, I was thinking,
and it's completely false stress. It's all leading to
but
hyper competition.
Also, no, because I mean, there are so many wars being waged overseas that need to have consent manufactured for them, and you can't just wage war without making money for that war from somewhere. So I mean, I feel like the American people are being stressed by those forces, though they may not realize that's where the stress is coming from.
But that's part of the whole system,
right,
of creating ever more money,
more
dissatisfaction.
In that sense, it's definitely unnecessary.
Ever more reaching for more, and never being satisfied.
But also, I was wondering how much of that, in terms of being exposed to aggressive, rough encounters with more aggressive mice, as they put that. But social stress comes in different forms, and obviously humans are different from mice in ways. So I wonder how much of the, and of course we haven't really covered this, but it is sort of public knowledge at this point, how much Facebook and Instagram, social media type places, affect people's mental well-being.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's so many divorces that came from Facebooks, and people report depression from Instagram, feeling not adequate because of things they're seeing, which are also manufactured. So just this sprawling of what used to be only on TV through Hollywood, look at this celebrity, don't you want to be like them? Now it's become a fractal, thing with layers of celebrity, and it's infiltrated through everywhere, and people are stressed out by it.
Every strata of society, and it's always constantly, you got to have ambition. Well, ambition is one thing. If it's about self-improvement and achieving some happiness and stability in your life, that's one thing. But we're taught that you have to keep up with everyone around you. You have to keep up, and every one of them is attempting to reach the next plateau. And every time they reach a new plateau, they're dissatisfied with it and have to reach for more and more. And if you're not reaching for more, well, you've got no ambition, and that's bullshit. That's being able to find some level of thankfulness for your life. The key to happiness is not getting what you want; it's wanting what you've got. The key to happiness is being more satisfied with life, and not being a black hole that can never ever be satisfied. But we've taught ourselves to be black holes that are never satisfied and always competing. And and part of it's the group, and understanding there are group behaviors and not just individuals. Like, who's to blame? Well, who's to blame when somebody gets trampled, when a crowd is running from a fire? All of them are. And so we're kind of all responsible for this situation that we're in, and there's no specific individual in many cases that can be held accountable. We're all trampling those poor people who have fallen. So it's a difficult problem to deal with, that because one of the things that we've set up is this competition. And competition is very real. In other words, the competition in our society, even though the truth of the matter is none of us, our lives are not truly in danger, and so the stress hormones and all those things are an artificial thing. We're capable of putting ourselves in a movie theater and showing ourselves images that can be startling and can make our bodies produce bursts of stress hormones, and then we're capable of locking ourselves in dull places over long periods of time with people who are unhappy being there, which is basically that's another type of stress. So we create all these fake stressors that modulate our everything about our brains, our epigenetics, and put us in a place where we are really actually competing with each other in a way that is extremely unhealthy. We've set up a system of competition because we believed that, well, if everybody's in competition with each other, everything comes out fine. Because guess what? Back in the 50s, they had some very simpleton ideas that were fucking stupid. They had some great ideas as well. There was lots of great stuff, but we a lot of times, there's a problem of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but sometimes there's a problem of drinking the bathwater because there's a baby in it. You're accepting the garbage just because there's something good in there, and you take the whole thing, and you don't need to take the whole thing. You need to be able to separate the two, and so some of these things that we've set up for ourselves is this constant competition, and there is a way that people use their wealth, they use their status to make our lives less pleasurable. People are constantly using their status and wealth against each other because they're dissatisfied in one way or another, and sometimes feeling like you're above somebody makes you not feel as bad about being below somebody, and so people are constantly punching down, and we've just created this system which is basically just a huge herd. We're all fucking trampling, and we're all trampling each other. We're all panicked, and somehow or another we've got to take responsibility for this shit system that we've created because, well, it's bringing about the end of civilization, humanity, etc. But I'm sure there's lots of people who don't believe that, but whatever. It is, and we've got to find a way to go get back to thankfulness and appreciation of what we have, and that's very difficult when those around us are not. And so, how do you get everybody doing it at the same time? It's just like if you're in a crowd of people. Here's the problem: if you're in a crowd of people who are all trampling. Say you're the one guy who's like, I am going to be a hero here, and I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop and say, no, I will not trample that person in front of me. And a lot of very simple, minded, white hat kind of people think that they would be able to do that in a crowd. And you know what would really happen to them? What would happen to them? They'd just get trampled and die too. And so what's the solution when a crowd is stampeding and there's no possible way you could hold back an entire crowd of people? And if you just stop, then they'll just trample you too. So how do you solve this problem? And basically the way of solving the problem is all of us screaming together, stop running. All of us have to scream it and we have to get other people screaming it, stop running, stop running, stop running. And we have to be able to chant it together. We have to find some way to get the message to everyone to start appreciating life. Stop being ambitious. Ambition is not a one-sided type of thing. It can be something that is fucking horrible, and it's also something that is necessary. You have to have a level of ambition because that is in balance with your situation, with your surroundings. That's absolutely a necessity because we have to go out, we have to get food, we have to continue improving to some extent. That is absolutely true. I mean, that's part of evolution. Those things that don't continue to have some level of improvement, and moving forward, they will eventually die. But there is a balance to it. You can't just go from all the way from everybody's freaking the fuck out and to everybody just standing still in a hole. There's not two extremes. We have to find some balance. And so that's a difficult path for us. That we've all got to slow down, but not stop. We've all got to stop. We got to stop trampling each other.
Oh, it's true. So, one way, I guess, I'm trying to find a segue. One way to divert from the manufactured chaos and what's the word scarcity of this world, and I don't know. I feel like if we redirect our because at this point, like we need a revolution, right? But how are we going to do it without
well,
blood?
all of it, each one of us has to decide to chant together. That's, I mean, these things happen in crowds all the time. The people just start chanting
So
because
as a
they
metaphor,
all decide together.
Right,
And
and so one of the ways we can do it, of course, it doesn't really matter. I'm not here to organize protests, but one way I feel like people have always unified in something that is above the bullshit that we're in right now is like science and space and exploration and fun things like that. Like we're all been,
but also appreciation, getting people back. Everybody understands how important thankfulness is.
That's not our segue.
Oh, sorry.
That is
I'm totally
messed
up your segue. I'm so bad.
So space.
Positive things
and science and well no thankfulness is positive, it's just not relevant to my segue.
Yes, I know. Totally messing you up here.
No worries. It was really, I was reaching for it anyway. So one of the ways I feel like, I mean, because people are talking about like where's our future, where's our Star Trek, where's our hoverboards, like we want to have moved into the future that science fiction envisioned. On that note, we have, can science fiction predict the future of technology for patrons? And it's a really interesting discussion we're going to have. So anyway, yeah, a little teaser there. But so we have predicted the future and imagined it together collectively. We did collectively chant for a certain future, and that was full of technology and space, and we didn't get it. And people are pissed that we're still stuck in the same old 80s stuff.
Because we more focused on things.
So one of the way I'm thinking of that could work to reorient ourselves is to look back out there, and that may be the whole UFO thing. And it wouldn't be our show if we didn't mention UFOs at some point. So I do have Fermi Paradox to talk about at the end.
That's a recent thing. We've been talking about the UFOs
on the show.
Oh yeah.
So in the recent news, not specifically news that are recent, which they sort of are, but on the other hand, since it's MINDBEND, we're sort of going for interesting discovery, weird, new, mysterious, all that good stuff. So we have a Mercury shock. I don't really know why I said it like that, but so, oh no.
Mercury.
Mercury. What happened to my picture? It was just there a minute ago. What? It's showing up on one media, on one side of the.
And then not showing up in the other. That's so weird.
I see what happened here. It's been particularly anal, but that's okay.
There we go.
So yeah, there's a new BBC program, The Planets, with our friend Brian Cox. Well, not our friend, but you guys may have seen him in some British themed physics stuff. So there's a shock on Mercury, and what is going on there is that the probe, or whatever they had going there, which, I mean, I guess, should I talk about the asteroid first? Or the Mercury? That's fine, Mercury's fine. The documentary has revealed that there's something strange when they are examining Mercury's core. So I don't know how they were examining it, and it's bothering me. But he said there are instruments that allow us to see how the planet wobbles. And then he's talking about other messenger, I guess, is the it's a probe. There we go. Ha! Good. Okay. So NASA scientists were forced to, quote, completely rethink their theories about the formation of the planet Mercury, is the clickbait title, where it's not really clickbait, it's the actual title. And the details are that NASA launched Messenger probe in 2004 to go to Mercury and look at the surface and check out what's going on. But as was revealed in this BBC program, The Planets, which is, I guess, a documentary, that Messenger brought back some interesting research and they did some telemetry. I don't know, they did some measurements that looked at the gravitational pull of it, the wobble, and all 9 yards. So, and here's a quote from Brian Cox. So, when we do that, all these measurements, we find something very strange. Mercury's core extends out about 85% from the center of the planet to the surface. It's as if the rocks of the surface were smashed away, which to me that's a ridiculous description of what could cause that. But the observation is that the core extends, by their measurements, it extends 85% from the center to the
I don't
surface.
see why that would be all that surprising.
So the core is
the idea that
no, is it the mantle? Is the outside part?
Yeah.
So yeah, that part is very, very thin. It's only like what, 15%. There's more. The tiny probe began detecting chemical elements in concentrations that no one thought possible this close to the sun. The discovery of relatively large concentration of elements like sulfur and potassium on Mercury was a huge surprise. If you think back, and this is still quoting Brian, if you think back to the time when the planets were forming, you don't expect high concentration of those elements close to the sun where Mercury orbits today, because they're so-called volatile elements and boil away easily. So you only find high concentrations further out in the colder reaches of the solar system.
But the one thing that nobody cared to look at is if we suddenly have this very different gravitational profile of Mercury, has anyone thought to wonder about that one thing that general relativity, was all the rage? That's what that when it came to general relativity, why it was so popular was because of the precession of the perihelion of Mercury.
Oh.
And the precession of the perihelion of Mercury would be related to its gravitational profile, which would be related to its core. And I guarantee you, nobody brought that up.
Almost certainly.
Oh, there's no fucking way. No fucking way.
Well, also, I would like to propose a theory based on some of the nature shows and other things we recently watched, where the idea is that they're talking about sulfur and potassium being in high concentrations, being volatile elements, and then they're also talking about the core being 85% extended towards the surface. Well, the way volcanoes do stuff, there's that really interesting volcano in I think Asia somewhere. I forgot its name, but it has the blue flames, and the local miners might have been in Latin America. I don't know. A bunch of miners go there to mine sulfur though, and so maybe I don't know about potassium, but sulfur, in my limited knowledge, is excreted from the earth because of volcanic activity. So is Mercury maybe doing that, and hence the core being so close to the surface, maybe it's just like a little volcano. So that would explain it forming near the sun, because those volatile elements are just continuing to
no, what they're talking
out.
About is the early solar system, is that as the planets were just sort
first
of
forming.
Yeah, they were first forming, and theoretically closer to the center, they shouldn't be there. But I don't know about that. They've got, here's the thing, they believe with such purity, such faith, these models that they're basically pulling out of their ass. There's so many problems with astronomy where they just so faithfully believe whatever the first thing they come up with. And then it's like, and then every time we falsify one of those beliefs, they never think to themselves, it's like, we need to have less faith in these models and say these are but they always present them to each other. I mean, they'll, if you press any scientist or a physicist or things like that, oh yeah, it's always just the best model. But that's not the way they present it to themselves. That's not the way they actually believe it. When you question them around it, don't bring up how much they're believing it or anything like that. Just ask them to answer questions, and if you play around, you'll see that they have absolute faith that this one thing is true. And it's only when you talk about how much faith that they have that they'll say, oh no, we're not absolutely believing in it. And it's like, that's bullshit. It's just a fucking lie. They're lying to themselves. And you can always find that they just absolutely believe this model that they came up with that it's got so many leaps of faith in it, and they just don't recognize it. But go ahead.
Oh yeah, no. Speaking of leaps of faith, where the guy said, or at least one of the guys' theory, whoever he was that, oh yeah, it's because they were smashed away with rocks. That just gets me. I can't. Like, so they're uniformly smashed. Like, what are you talking about? Stop
Yes, because the rocks that came in smashed the other rocks away. Yeah, that totally makes sense.
In a
right?
non-jagged, completely smooth-looking, like Mercury doesn't look like the moon.
Well, no, they're talking about over time. I mean, yeah, it's
over time, and it perfectly polished it. Like, what is it in the middle of a asteroid belt?
Well,
Like,
no, that's not a good argument because the
I guess there's the atmosphere. Yeah.
Well, all the planets are round after time, after enough time, and so.
Well, the moon isn't. It's all like rough with craters and shit.
Yeah, well, no, so's Mercury. Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, all the planets that don't have an atmosphere are I mean, what I mean to say is the less atmosphere a planet has, the more it's pockmarked with craters and things like that.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I was like, wait a minute, there's atmospheres that make it appear around, but
right. Well, no, I mean they are round. I mean,
well,
you keep changing between
smooth.
They're not perfectly smooth. I mean, there's these. They look smooth because you're looking at something that's gargantuan from way far away.
Yes. So speaking of look at something gargantuan from way far away, perfect segue. Thank you. We have the NASA asteroid.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about that guy insulting my dick.
What?
No, it was a joke. You don't remember the guy like insulted me? Never mind. It was a good joke if you had remembered. I thought you would.
It was just felt so out of place. Here, I got.
You said, speaking of somebody looking at something gargantuan from way far away.
Oh, I guess so. Yeah.
Come on,
go with me here. I can see it. I'm there.
Totally ruined it.
I'm sorry. So there's a picture of behold on your screens. Those who have screens, there's a picture. Those who don't have screens can go check out our patreon.com/AnnaCherry, and there you can actually click on posts and see public or the CherrySTEM little hashtag area and see all of the posts we have uploaded of this show, which stretches back 30 some episodes, and you can listen to them all. There's an RSS link in the description down below. Come give us a listen. You can download all of them and just binge on your way to work. So, and the resources provided there will show you the picture. But we're talking about NASA has sent out a mission to the asteroid. Osiris REX mission managed to reach a new level of proximity as it studies the asteroid Bennu. And Osiris Rex stands for Origins, Spectral Interpretation, Resource Identification, Security, Regolith, Explorer. And it's NASA's first asteroid sample that has returned and has it's the first NASA mission that has actually yielded results from being sent to an asteroid.
Okay, so it picked rocks off an asteroid and came back?
Well, right now we just took a picture. Because it's NASA's first asteroid sample return mission. So.
Sample?
But I don't think it actually returned yet.
Wait, what?
Because the article that I read about it is like, it's going to do these things, it's going to take pictures, and then...
Okay,
but then
it's the first mission that plans to...
But the thing is, though, it's also...
Yeah, that's right. I remember reading something about where China was probably going to do it before we did.
They're also telling us, showing us a picture that it actually took.
Yeah, because it's already landed.
But the rest of the article is saying it will land.
Yeah.
It will take a picture. I'm like, bitch, it already did! Fucking put it in present terms. What are you doing? It frustrated me to
they
know
may be talking, because we've taken pictures of other asteroids, so maybe...
No, but the caption is specifically Osiris Rex captured this image on asteroid Bennu, April 12th, 2019. But then the description goes, after maneuver, the special NASA asteroid study mission, and then blah, 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 Osiris Rex mission managed to reach a new level of proximity as it studies the asteroid. After a maneuver, the spacecraft and NASA asteroid study mission is orbiting closer to a planetary body than any spacecraft has ever come, the space agency said. The mission recently entered a new phase where the spacecraft will orbit about 2,231 feet above the asteroid Bennu's surface. It will remain this close to the asteroid until the second week of August. The spacecraft broke its previous record. Osiris, which during this phase known as orbital B, the spacecraft will snap images of the asteroid's horizon and map the object to determine where the best sample collection site on Bennu's surface is, NASA said in a statement released Thursday.
Okay,
so
well,
it took one picture and then it's going to take more, I guess, to determine where to
Yeah, I
land?
think
Because
that's
the will is throwing me the fuck off. It's,
yeah.
I,
Maybe it was orbiting from a higher. If that's from 2,000,
it had, yeah, it said
if that's
the
from 2,000
previous record
feet,
was
that's
4,000.
weird.
But this
I mean,
was
look at all
2,000
those
feet.
like rocks. Like those would be ginormous. Fucking, just looks like they look like pebbles.
From 2,000 feet.
Yeah, from 2,000 feet.
Above the
That looks
surface.
like something that you take like sitting on the ground. But if that's from 2,000 feet up, those are gargantuan.
Especially this boy.
Basically, those are. It's an asteroid made up of lots of other asteroids.
I could see that. They might have landed on it and just are
Yeah,
there now.
they just gathered together, collected together. But
So
that's
they're
neat.
saying it's unlikely that Bennu will. I believe there might be another picture, and that one I don't know if it's from 4,000 feet or why the resolution is different, but
Yeah, they're going to collect something and then
in
send
the
it back.
it's on a 7-year mission. The spacecraft, which was launched in September 2016, arrived at Bennu in 2018 December, and I think that's when we talked about it. It will survey and map Bennu, navigate in close proximity to the asteroid, and ultimately touch the surface for 5 seconds to retrieve a sample, which is what the website's mission says. So yeah, that's Daredevil spacecraft maneuvering, and this is 700 meters above the asteroid surface. So looks like it got even closer. It broke their previous record, which was 4,000 feet.
Well, wait, that picture's what?
How can it
If
be
that
700?
If that's 700 meters,
And
and the other
into
was
a new orbit less than 700 meters above the asteroid surface. So I don't know
Yeah,
which.
what the hell's that other picture? Because that's not that picture.
This one they
is
say
nothing at all like the other one.
Oh, they don't say. Actually, the mission recently entered a new phase, which has nothing to do with the photo. That's the text.
But what the fuck is that photo there for, assholes?
It captured the image of the asteroid on April 12th, so that is the most recent one.
Well, how? No, this.
I know,
You're right. This doesn't
thank
make
you.
any fucking
Thank
sense.
you. They saw it.
That picture is close the fuck up, and this one is not.
But
and
they're
this
not.
one's
They're not giving a distance here.
Yeah, but supposedly it's getting closer and closer, and is eventually going to
Yes.
land.
So
Whereas
this
that
is the
one,
most recent picture.
that one's supposedly
April
the
12th,
most.
2019.
But what's the distance? Because if it was
They're not telling you.
but no, they said that it's going to orbit at like 2,000 feet or something, which is close to 700 meters. And if the other picture that's like you can see the whole goddamn asteroid
700 meters, yeah.
that's roughly 2,000 fucking feet. I mean, it's in the area of it anyway.
I don't know.
Oh,
They're
that's
bad-
okay.
they're bad
That's
at
annoying me. That article can
Thank
kiss
you.
my ass.
Thank you. They're bad at presenting information. You
Or
are
did this sucks?
9 News. You suck. Get better.
Suck ass.
Well, hold on a sec. Maybe what if
It's a local news station. No wonder they fucked
Well,
it up.
it's British, but
Doesn't matter. It's local news.
so let's see. Let's give them a chance to explain. Maybe they're
Fastest iPad ever and a new laptop were front and center of a big announcement from Apple this morning.
No, that's not what we want to talk about. We don't want an Apple announcement. Where's the asteroid? No, I'm
Shit,
not
playing
touching
an
this.
asteroid.
Oh my god.
No, that's trash. No, forget this. Forget this local news channel. They're trash.
Wait. Yes. We did it. They moved on to other stories because they could. But we don't want them to.
Oh, NASA's given us Earthlings a bit of a treat this morning, sharing a series of impressive photos captured from across our solar system. The first reveals a stunning cosmic display on Mars, revealing a splash of blue on a red planet. How cool is that? It's thought to be a new crater which was created when an asteroid hit the planet sometime in the past 3 years. The space agency also sharing these pictures, setting a record for the closest a spacecraft has ever been to an asteroid. Sorry, if an asteroid causes that much damage on Mars, we're not very far away. It's not the most encouraging. But we get Bruce Willis. Ah, exactly. Right, okay. Firing big missiles into the sky and we're all safe.
Or are they Australian? I can't tell.
That sounds Aussie.
Well,
I
either
mean,
way,
Aussie, not
we
Aussie.
know,
They're Aussie Aussies.
I'm sorry, guys, but we know how bad Australian media is. It's god awful. I'm
God
sorry,
awful.
guys. Your shit sucks real bad. Like, your mainstream media is bad. Don't have very much of it, but it's bad. So that's fun and happened and will continue to happen.
Who knows? That was a bad article. We should have found a better article for that one.
Well, I'm sorry. It gave me relevant information that I needed for the skeleton of it, and it gave me visual imagery, but the nerd,
details,
the nerd
woo!
details that we got into,
The details are
in
bad.
spite of ourselves, are like, well, okay, so we know that it at least took
They
one.
probably just took random photos
took
off
one
of NASA's
image.
website and like, yeah, just paste them up there and
And
label
they do know
whatever.
they do know that they took one image from the 700 meter, which is pretty dang close, and they had more than one of the super close up ones. So they could have just misplaced their captioning. But either way, it's close. It's gonna get even closer because it's surveying the land for where to land
Sure.
for 5 seconds.
That's what they're saying. I don't
yeah.
trust a damn thing that they say.
Well, no, that's what NASA says. That was from.
No, that's what they say that NASA says.
Oh my god. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, theoretically, there's
I'll
a
trust a fucking thing
there's a
that article
NASA
says now.
briefing that I would assume they had basic competence.
I would assume they had an imbecile listening to and shitting out meaningless words. Yes.
So speaking of NASA and meaningless words, no. Speaking of NASA and other things, we wouldn't be us without talking about UFOs when we talk about space in the past
UFOs.
couple of things here that we've done. So there's this idea about the Fermi paradox, and I will explain in just a second what that is. And there's also sort of a response to it called the dark forest, which is sort of relevant to something you brought up last night about, and you'll see why. So I'm really interested in presenting this to you, but just real quick, I will break down the two sides of it. The dark forest is a separate concept from the Fermi paradox, and I believe there's an article
Well, it's
somewhere.
an answer to it, I'm sure, right?
Right, yeah, in a way, exactly. So the Fermi paradox is this paradox of like, why are there no aliens? However, if you look at, both articles are from Forbes, which I find fascinating. If you look at the fact that astronomers have already discovered thousands of exoplanets, as of New Year's Day and these are ones out, exoplanets, worlds outside our solar system. As of New Year's Day 2018, NASA has confirmed the existence of 3,572 exoplanets, with 5,078 more awaiting final verification. And NASA also reports through Forbes, or via Forbes, that what we already know is that about 80% of star systems are expected to have planets around them. The vast majority of planets are 3 times the size of Earth or smaller, not gas giants, and that it's estimated there are approximately 60 billion rocky, habitable zone planets in our galaxy alone. So, to me, the Fermi paradox isn't really the paradox.
The Fermi paradox is old as shit before we started finding exoplanets.
Right.
And now there's literally billions of Goldilocks zone, liquid water area planets within our galaxy alone. Yeah. And so the likelihood that there is a life in our galaxy went up not just exponentially. I mean, it's inconceivable. It's inconceivable how much larger than what people used to believe. Just with this new knowledge that we have, I mean, it was unreasonable before with the whole. I always thought it was unreasonable for them to believe that we were the only life in the universe, because, well, it's, we live in the Goldilocks zone, and it's there's all these reasons why we might be the only life in the universe, and it was just ridiculous. Them just really kind of catering their beliefs they're catering the evidence to fit their preconceived notions and beliefs, and now we have massive evidence that the likelihood that there isn't life just abundant across the universe is so just unbelievably low. It's ridiculous, is what it is. It's like, yes, it's possible that you might be hit by a meteorite in the next 15 seconds. It is possible. Is it probable? Fuck no. And so the same thing is true of life in the universe. That what is the vast majority of likely is that our galaxy is teeming with life.
So, therefore, though, the Fermi paradox still stands in a way because it might have been rephrased or might have meant this all along. But the idea is, what is this apparent contradiction between the high possibility, as we've mentioned it, high possibility estimates for aliens, and then the lack of existence of aliens?
Lack of evidence of aliens.
Which we already kind of have already. But yes.
Right.
So, if you're interested in aliens and the Fermi paradox in terms of like, why haven't they landed on the White House lawn, there's a must-read novel, as this article suggests, called The Three Body Problem. It's a novel written by a Chinese writer, Lu... I don't want to butcher this.
Just accept that you're going to butcher it, and people can, they'll deal with it. They'll be okay.
I would say Lu Shishin, but I can't be sure, so I'm gonna wiki it, and that didn't really help.
Nope.
Nope. There's no.
It looks like Lou Kixon, but it's probably
Cixin. But I know the X is a
it's like a sh kind of thing.
More like a ja.
Maybe I don't know.
But I have very limited exposure
We're
to
clueless,
Chinese.
So we apologize in advance.
I'm so sorry, Lu Shishin. So yeah, it's a novel written by a Chinese writer, and you can look it up by The Three Body Problem. And in the novel, Lu introduces a theory called the Dark Forest Theory. The theory has two axioms. The first one is that the survival is the first need of a civilization, which means that each will do whatever they need to do to ensure their survival. And the second axiom is that civilizations will always grow, develop, and expand, needing more and more resources, while the total amount of resources in the universe is finite. Lu then introduced a concept called suspicion chain. If two civilizations meet each other, they would like to know if the other side is friend or enemy. Even though the other side behaves friendly, they would not know for sure if the other side is genuinely friendly or just faking it. Therefore, the bottom line is every civilization other than us is a potential threat. I mean, this is sort of like the not prisoner's dilemma, but some basic game theory, in a way.
Yeah.
Therefore, the bottom line is for every civilization other than us, every civilization other than ours is a potential threat. And so the best way for our civilization to survive is to hide ourselves and destroy any potential threat.
Or just shut the fuck up. I mean, just be quiet. There's a lot.
Well,
when you're an animal in a dark forest, you be fucking quiet.
But you're stealing his thunder.
Okay, sorry.
The theory father refers to the universe as a dark forest, while each civilization is a hunter inside it. Each hunter should be extremely careful since there are a lot of hunters like him in this forest. And when he finds other people in a forest, he should kill them as quick and insidious as possible. So, yes, the idea is to hide and to strike.
Right.
And to basically be hostile to anything other than yourself, but also to keep yourself hidden in the darkness.
Except that's an oversimplification of game theory, and the truth of the matter is, it's actually better to find allies. But you do have to try to determine whether or not they're allies.
That's the question: are they friendly? Or are they enemy?
Yeah,
are they faking?
And there is always a difficult process in finding and making allies that is slow and careful, and but it's not. Just like the simplified game theory is always defect. That's not game theory over time. And so civilizations that always just attacked every time they encountered another civilization would eventually be destroyed by larger collectives. It would eventually backfire, and they'd be weeded out. Just like there's animals that don't just attack every time they encounter something. It's an oversimplified system, and that's I hate oversimplification of game theory because that's what's destroying our civilization right now. It's literally the oversimplification of game theory that is just about to bring about the end of mankind. It really is. Oversimplification of what the best thing to do in the prisoner's dilemma led us to our economic theory and led us to the simplified just compete, take. And the Keynesian economics is a little different, but the point is that the idea is everybody try to just compete, just take as much as you possibly can, and everything will work out is fucking stupid. And it's failing gloriously.
Miserably.
Yeah, it's literally about to bring about the end of mankind. But so yeah, excuse me while it pisses me the fuck off that he's also using an oversimplification. So no, there would definitely be, yes, there would be ones that are dangerous, and it's hard to know whether or not the other one is dangerous, and that's why animals. There are a lot of animals that are not just predators. First off, they're predators for smaller prey sometimes, but they are collaborators with equal sized and types, and a lot of times they're not just going around killing absolutely everything. They're only taking as much as they need to survive, and they actually have some level of balance within their system. That's how animals work. And so the same thing would be true of an ecosystem of civilizations within a galaxy, is that they would over a long enough period of time, they would be like animals in a forest. I do agree with that, but those animals in the forest are not just trying to take as much as they possibly can. That's not how biology works. It's not how evolution works. It's not how complex systems work. That's how a simpleton's ideas of those things work. And so that's just my pet peeve, because it's that those simpleton ideas are literally destroying us. So sorry as I go off on a rant here. That's just.
So back to the Fermi paradox and the dark forest idea, though. Does that sound like something that would be? Because I mean,
absolutely, yeah. There would be a lot of them. First off, would learn to be quiet.
Right.
A lot of them would learn to be careful. But then one of the other things that is, there's just there's a lot of different solutions to the Fermi paradox. There's tons of them. There's one of them is that there's the don't give a fuck theory, and that is we don't when we see some less advanced animal, when we're going to go and build a super highway through the forest, and this is maybe it's better to say it's the Hitchhiker's Guide theory, and that is when we you're going to build a highway through a forest, we don't go out and try to talk to the raccoons and tell them, well, hey, how do you feel about this? And none of us give a shit what the raccoons think, and even though they can do cute human things with their hands, and are pretty damn smart, truthfully, but for the most part, our civilization does not give a great big flying fuck about them. We don't go and tell them anything. We don't even watch them. We just don't care. And the same thing would be true.
Haven't bothered to learn the language.
Right, we haven't bothered to learn the language. We don't give a shit. And the same thing would be true of a civilization that's significantly advanced beyond ours. And given how quickly we have advanced in just 100 years, the possibility that a civilization reaches this exponential growth period where they keep growing to go in technology and in a variety of ways, so that we would be so just a bunch of fucking idiot apes. They wouldn't give a shit. They wouldn't tell us. There'd be a few naturalists who would come into the forest and take pictures and look at these. Look at how cute them doing cute, alien things with their hands. It's like they would
look at them tinkering with devices.
Right, and there would be a couple of joyriding kids that might smash their spaceship into or some rednecks that might occasionally. So the truth of the matter
kidnap some raccoons.
Yeah, they might kidnap some raccoons and beat the shit out of them. That happens. Rednecks do that shit. And so yeah, we might literally be having alien encounters, and our alien encounters are made up of naturalists and rednecks, of our galaxy, and and the rest of them just don't care. And so because the galaxy is so vast,
and there are so many habitable planets.
And there are so many habitable planets. There may be plenty of growth space still, which is probably that seems fairly likely that there's plenty of growth space, and so you combine that with the way that evolution has proven that systems that can persist find a balance and harmony with the other complex systems around them. They don't just become devourers. They don't just keep expanding until they implode.
Yeah, that second axiom.
Dysfunctional
that
system.
is, to me, a broken axiom that civilization will always expand forever.
No, that's anything that continues to expand destroys itself. That always is what's happened. I mean, there has to be a balance with the systems around it.
In other words, bringing back to what you were saying, that biological
That's
organisms,
cancer.
organisms, right, only grow so big. They do have a self-contained,
Right.
Therefore, a good civilization like biological organism will have a
Right, and
self-containment.
so you have to think of these other civilizations like organisms, and they would be like different organisms, and they would create their own, interlocking, interconnected sort of system, that they were, that they would have some sort of balance within. It wouldn't just be constantly growing. But at the same time, yes, there would be a fearfulness of other unknowns, because you never know what another organism might be like. I mean, even when we go out in the forest, we don't necessarily, well, I guess because we feel like we're apex predators, we go and tromp around and because we've got our guns and everything else. But just 100 years ago, or even if you're by yourself and all you got is like a knife or whatever at best, or you're just alone in the forest, you don't necessarily go around yelling and stuff. If you're in a forest that has bears and everything else, you might kind of be quiet and move stealthily through it instead of announcing your presence. And then there's just the idea that all technology has to be like our technology, some noisy shit that is like, this is where you get into a millimeter wave technology is like the wave of the future, or sub-millimeter. I forget where terahertz is right now. But the terahertz range is something they're talking about using for all kinds of new technology. It's the best thing since sliced bread, but way back, I'm sure we've linked it before. There's an MIT report on how it impacts DNA, and there's all these things there that we're finding that are different technologies. Our reach keeps exceeding our grasp, and we're damaging ourselves with these things. Everybody's talking about how great terahertz is, but it's going it's going to damage DNA. It's going to cause just huge problems if we don't stop it and kill that thing in its fucking crib. That terahertz technology needs to be strangled in its crib, because you're talking about, it basically reaches a resonant frequency with lots of different biological molecules, and that resonance ends up tearing them apart. And so there's all these studies, there's just tons of peer-reviewed by very well-established organizations like MIT, for instance,
and we'll be linking a card to that discussion where we talked about it at length and had lots of resources available on Patreon. Go check it out.
Cool.
Yeah, it's bad.
So terahertz, and now they're finding it's like, oh well, it turns out that sticking a cell phone to your head and blasting it into your brain there might actually cause some problems. They're even finding that which we used to label like kind of conspiracy theory, tinfoil hattery, is now there's science behind that is fucking bad. It's not it's not going to immediately fry your brain, but doing it over time could actually have some pretty significant negative impact.
Not good.
Yeah, and so it's we keep believing that these other civilizations are going to have the same noisy shit technology, when the truth of the matter is, when you look at the way technology evolves and the way that biology works, biology is wet nanotech. You can eventually, if you understood biology well enough, it's so complex that we're still, it's nearly fucking magic because of the way it uses emergence and like the way that cells differentiate. Truthfully, if you have one thing to study in your life that you don't get to go to any classes anywhere about anything, developmental biology will blow your fucking mind. And specifically developmental bio, and seeing how
it becomes from a clump of cells to
DNA uses emergence to create and differentiate cells. It's just fucking amazing, and it really relates to so many different things in all throughout reality. So it's that just, if we master biology, we will be able to. I mean, we've already created things like diodes and computer computational things with biology. So when it comes down to it, there is basically nothing you can't do with biology in the way of technology. We'll be able to make, we'll be able to grow lasers in the future. If our technology continues to advance and we continue to understand biology, you'll be able to grow a TV. You'll be able to grow, all of these things and be able to produce technology that's biological in nature, and it doesn't. If everything that you had was biotech, then it wouldn't be producing the same kinds of electromagnetic impulses necessarily. There's just so many ways in which our the technology could be different, and we wouldn't necessarily be some noisy civilization. So thinking that their technology is going to be exactly like ours, this dirty, destructive, noisy shit that we've got right now, is ridiculous. It's like looking for sign, like it's for people from the the 1800s looking for signs of steam. They don't have technology if they're not burning lots of coal. So obviously this if they came to our looked at our civilization, it's like, okay, well, if they're not producing a lot of steam, then they're obviously not a technological civilization. It's like, no, that's not right. It's ridiculous.
You have given me the perfect segue into specifically what our Patreon after chat, after show goodness is all about, which is, can science fiction predict the future of technology? And real quick, yes and no. But we're gonna discuss at length with our patrons how it may be true and has been true, possibly, maybe, has it?
Oh, absolutely.
And then we're also going to talk about how many times the predictions were completely wrong and why. And I think that's going to be really juicy to discuss with our patrons in the after show. So definitely become a patron. I'm going to keep pushing it on you all the time, everywhere. I love our community that we build through Patreon, and all of those on Discord as a greater community as well as Patreon community. And we love producing educational stuff like this for free for everyone, and our patrons help us do that. So if you'd like to help, check out patreon.com/AnnaCherry. There are awesome rewards. CherrySTEM specifically is supported by the Challenger tier. You will recognize a familiar thumbnail. Definitely give that a gander when you got a minute, and support the show if you like what you're hearing and you would like to continue us doing this every week. And with that, we thank you for listening, and we shall go hang out with our patrons, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.